In the vast silence of the desert, a single choice can echo for a lifetime, and the richest veins are not of gold, but of courage. The sun beat down on the canyon, a merciless hammer on stone. Amelia Thorne, shielded by a wide-brimmed hat, chipped at a rock face with her geologist's pick. Dust and sweat mingled on her brow as she searched for the telltale green of copper deposits. Her worn leather satchel, heavy with tools and maps, sat beside her. She was alone, a solitary figure in the vast, silent landscape of the Arizona Territory. A sudden, deep groan echoed from the rocks above. She froze, her hand tightening on the pick. The ground beneath her boots trembled, not with the gentle shudder of the earth, but with a violent grinding protest. The canyon wall was giving way. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the afternoon heat. A cascade of rock and dust plunged towards her. Amelia scrambled back, her boots slipping on loose scree. A large boulder crashed where she had stood moments before, shattering into 1,000 deadly fragments. She was trapped, a wall of falling debris sealing the canyon pass behind her. Panic tightened its grip on her chest. Then, a hand, strong and steady, grabbed her arm, pulling her towards a narrow fissure in the rock she had not seen. A man with eyes as dark as the canyon's shadows and skin the color of rich earth moved with a silent grace that defied the chaos. He wore buckskin trousers and a simple cotton shirt, his long black hair tied back with a leather cord. He did not speak, simply pulled her into the safety of the crevice. The roar of the rockslide faded, replaced by an unnerving silence and a thick cloud of dust. Amelia leaned against the cool stone, her heart pounding against her ribs. She looked at her rescuer. He was an Apache, she knew from his features and the quiet intensity of his gaze. He watched the dust settle, his expression unreadable. "Thank you," she finally managed to say, her voice hoarse. He gave a slight nod, his eyes scanning the new landscape of rubble that blocked the canyon. "The way is closed," he said, his voice low and calm. "We must wait." Amelia studied him, a mix of gratitude and apprehension churning within her. In this wild land, a savior and a threat could often look the same. As dusk painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, the air grew cold. The man built a small, smokeless fire in a hollow of the cave. He offered her a piece of dried meat from a pouch at his belt. "I am Nathan," he said, breaking the long silence between them. "I am Amelia Thorne," she replied, accepting the food. "I am a geologist. I was surveying for the railroad." Nathan's expression hardened slightly at the mention of the railroad, a shadow passing over his features. "The iron snake," he murmured, looking into the flames. "It consumes the land." Amelia felt a defensive urge but held her tongue. Tonight they were not representatives of two opposing worlds, but simply two people trapped by the uncaring power of nature. The next morning they explored the back of the cave, searching for another way out. The fissure opened into a larger cavern, cool and damp. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing in the stillness. A faint light filtered through a crack high above, illuminating the chamber. It was then that Amelia saw it. A thick, unmistakable vein running through the rock wall. It was not the green of copper. It was the brilliant, mesmerizing glint of gold. Her breath caught in her throat. It was the richest deposit she had ever seen, a fortune that could build cities or destroy lives. Nathan followed her gaze, his eyes narrowing as he recognized the yellow metal. He placed a hand on the cold wall, a silent reverence in his touch. "This is a sacred place," Nathan said softly, his voice echoing in the cavern. "A place of power." Amelia the scientist saw mineralogy and wealth. Nathan the warrior saw something more, a spirit in the stone. "This changes everything," she whispered, her mind racing with the implications. Such a find would bring a flood of men, all desperate to claim it. Men who would not care about sacred ground. "This discovery is a dangerous one," Nathan agreed, his gaze meeting hers. "It will bring nothing but greed and violence." He was right. The quiet beauty of the cavern was deceptive. They had stumbled upon a seed of chaos, They now shared a secret that could get them both killed. For 2 days, they worked to clear a small opening in the rockslide, a task that forged a silent partnership between them. Emilia used her knowledge of leverage and stress points, while Nathan possessed a tireless strength. They spoke little, but a current of understanding flowed between them. She saw the intelligence in his eyes, the way he understood the land not as a resource to be exploited, but as a living entity. He saw her resilience, her refusal to be a helpless victim. In the shared struggle for survival, the barriers of their different worlds began to crumble, replaced by a foundation of mutual respect. He started to see the woman, not just the outsider. Finally, they cleared an opening large enough to squeeze through. As they emerged into the bright sunlight, blinking against the glare, the world felt different. The secret of the gold lay behind them, a silent weight in the air. "What will you do?" Nathan asked, his eyes searching her face. "The railroad will want to know why this route is blocked." Emilia hesitated. "I will report the rockslide. But the gold must remain our secret." A flicker of surprise, then approval, showed in his eyes. "It is a wise choice," he said. "But secrets have a way of being found." He led the way towards the distant settlement of Redemption, and for the first time she did not feel like she was following a stranger. The town of Redemption was a single dusty street lined with wooden storefronts, a testament to the railroad's relentless push westward. As Nathan and Emilia walked into town, they drew stares. Heads turned, conversations paused. The sight of them together, an Apache man and a well-dressed woman, was an unwelcome curiosity. Emilia felt the weight of their judgment, the unspoken hostility. Nathan seemed oblivious, his posture straight and his gaze fixed ahead, but she could feel the tension in him, a coiled stillness. They went to the land office to report the blocked canyon pass, the first step in their careful deception. The clerk eyed Nathan with open suspicion, his hand hovering near the revolver at his hip. Later, in the hotel dining room, a man approached their table. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his silver hair neatly combed. His smile was warm, but his eyes were cold as steel. "Miss Thorne," he said, his voice smooth as polished wood. "I am Alistair Morgan. I own the railroad. I heard you had some trouble in the canyon." Emilia felt a chill despite the stuffy air. This was the man whose iron snake Nathan despised. "A rockslide," she said carefully. "The pass is completely blocked." Morgan's smile did not waver. "A great inconvenience. You found no valuable deposits, I trust? Nothing that would warrant the expense of clearing it?" His question was casual, but his eyes held a predatory gleam. "Nothing but worthless shale," Emilia lied, her voice steady. "The company's geological surveys were mistaken." Morgan's gaze flickered to Nathan, dismissing him as little more than a piece of furniture. "And your guide? Is he from a local tribe?" The question was laced with condescension. "Nathan saved my life," Emilia stated, her tone sharp. Morgan's smile tightened. "How noble. Well, the railroad is grateful. Enjoy your meal." He turned and walked away, a man accustomed to owning everything he saw. Nathan watched him go, his expression grim. "He is a man who takes what he wants," Nathan said quietly. "And he does not believe you." That night, Emilia lay awake. The image of Morgan's cold eyes burned into her mind. The gold was no longer just a secret, it was a target. And Morgan was the hunter. She thought of Nathan, of the quiet strength and dignity he possessed. He was a part of this land, a land Morgan saw only as lines on a map and figures in a ledger. A quiet knock came at her door. It was Nathan. "He has men watching us," he said, his voice a low whisper. "We are not safe here." He passed her a small leather pouch. Inside was a piece of the gold quartz from the cave, a reminder of what is at stake. The weight of the stone in her palm felt heavy, a burden of truth in a town built on lies. The next day, Morgan's men made their presence known. They were a rough-looking group, led by a burly man with a thick mustache and cruel eyes who called himself Dutch. They followed Emilia to the general store, their boots loud on the boardwalk. They cornered Nathan as he left the livery stable. "Morgan wants a word with you, savage," Dutch sneered, blocking his path. His men fanned out, their hands resting on their firearms. Nathan stood his ground, his body relaxed but ready. "I have nothing to say to him," Nathan replied, his voice even. "I think you do," Dutch said, taking a step closer. "I think you know something about that canyon." The air crackled with tension, a prelude to violence. Amelia saw the confrontation from across the street. Her heart leaped into her throat. She saw the townsfolk watching, some with fear, others with a grim satisfaction. She knew they would do nothing to help Nathan. Acting on pure instinct, she walked purposefully towards the group. "Is there a problem, gentlemen?" she asked, her voice ringing with an authority she did not feel. Dutch turned, surprised by her interruption. "This is not your concern, Missy." "Nathan is in my employ," she declared, standing beside him. "If you have business with him, you have business with me. And my employer, Mr. Morgan, would not appreciate his geologist being delayed." The lie was bold, but it gave Dutch pause. Dutch hesitated, his small eyes shifting between Amelia and Nathan. He was not paid to cause a public scene with a woman who had the boss's ear. He grunted, a sound of frustration. "This is not over," he snarled at Nathan, before turning and leading his men away. As they retreated, Nathan looked at Amelia, a complex emotion in his eyes. It was not gratitude, but a deep, searching appraisal. "That was a foolish thing to do," he said, his voice low. "They are dangerous men." "I could not stand by and watch," she replied, her own courage surprising her. In that moment, they were no longer just allies of circumstance. They were partners, bound by a shared threat and an unspoken loyalty. Later, they met by the creek at the edge of town as twilight fell. "They will not be stopped by words next time," Nathan said, watching the water flow over the smooth stones. "Morgan wants what is in that cave. He will kill for it." "Then we cannot stay here," Amelia said. "We have to leave." "And go where?" Nathan challenged, his gaze intense. "He is building his empire of steel and wood. Soon, there will be nowhere left to run." Despair pricked at her, but she pushed it away. "Then we fight," she said, her resolve hardening. "We cannot let him win." Nathan looked at her for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "Yes," he agreed, "we fight. But not with their rules." They rode out at dawn, heading back towards the canyons. It was a risky move, but it was part of Nathan's plan. "They will follow," he had said, "and the land itself will be our weapon." They traveled fast, Nathan leading them through winding game trails and rocky passes that would be difficult for a larger group to navigate. Amelia, though not an expert rider, kept pace, her determination fueled by a mixture of fear and adrenaline. She trusted Nathan completely. His confidence was a quiet anchor in a sea of uncertainty. He moved through the wilderness not as a trespasser, but as someone who belonged, reading the signs in the dust and the sky that were invisible to her. As predicted, Dutch and his men were on their trail by midday. Nathan pointed to the dust cloud on the horizon. "They are coming." He led Amelia to a specific part of the canyon, a narrow passage with high, crumbling walls. "I remember this place from my survey," Amelia said, her eyes scanning the rock formations. "The shale here is extremely unstable. A significant vibration could bring it all down." A slow smile touched Nathan's lips. "That is what I hoped you would say." He explained his plan. It was dangerous, a gamble that relied on her knowledge and his timing. They would lure the men into the passage and create a rockslide to trap them, just as they themselves had been trapped before. They waited, hidden in an alcove above the narrow tunnel. Soon, Dutch and his 4 men rode into the passage below, their voices echoing off the rock walls. "They came this way, I am sure of it," Dutch said. "The savage cannot hide from me." At a signal from Nathan, Amelia pushed a carefully balanced stack of rocks over the edge. It was not a large fall, but it was enough. The rocks struck a weak point on the opposite wall, creating a fracture line that spread with terrifying speed. With a deafening roar, a section of the canyon wall sheared away, tons of rock and earth thundering down into the passage, sealing it completely. Shouts of terror and surprise were abruptly cut off. They did not wait to see the aftermath. They scrambled down the other side of the ridge and rode hard, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the trap. The canyon had saved them again, but Amelia felt no triumph, only a grim sense of necessity. She had used her science, her knowledge of the earth, not to build or discover, but to endanger. "We bought ourselves time," Nathan said, as they finally slowed their horses to a walk. "But they will dig themselves out, And when they do, they will be angry. Amelia looked at his stoic profile against the setting sun. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, she felt they had a chance to win. They rode for 2 days, deeper into the wilderness. The landscape softened from harsh rock to rolling hills dotted with juniper and pine. The shared danger and forced proximity had stripped away all pretense. They moved with an easy rhythm, speaking of their pasts. Amelia described the crowded cities of the East, the universities and libraries. Nathan spoke of the stories of his people, the legends woven into the fabric of the land they traveled. He taught her to identify edible plants and to read the tracks of animals. She, in turn, explained the forces that shaped the mountains and carved the canyons over millions of years. Their worlds, once so separate, began to overlap. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Nathan tended to a cut on Amelia's hand, a result of their hasty escape. His touch was gentle, his focus absolute. A strange warmth spread through her, a feeling that had nothing to do with the fire. She looked at his face, illuminated by the flickering flames, and saw not just a warrior or a guide, but a man of deep kindness and quiet sorrow. "Why do you help me?" she asked softly. He finished tying a strip of clean cloth around her hand before meeting her eyes. "Because you see the land," he said. "You do not just see the gold. You see the stone and the water and the life within it. You see its truth." The intimacy of the moment hung in the air between them. Amelia felt a powerful urge to bridge the small distance that separated them. The rules of her world, the prejudices of redemption, seemed like faint echoes from another lifetime. Here, there was only the vast, starry sky, the crackling fire, and the man beside her. A man who had saved her life and now seemed to be saving her soul. He looked at her, his dark eyes holding a question he would not voice. The air was thick with unspoken feelings, a fragile and beautiful thing taking root in the heart of the unforgiving wilderness. It was a love as unexpected and as powerful as the gold in the hidden cave. "We cannot just run," Amelia said, breaking the spell. "Exposing Morgan is the only way to be truly free of him. We need proof that he is a criminal." Nathan nodded, his expression turning serious again. "There are whispers in the other settlements. About a rancher named Miller. He owned the land next to the canyon. He refused to sell to Morgan. A month ago he was found dead. They called it a hunting accident." A cold dread settled in Amelia's stomach. It was too much of a coincidence. "We need to find out what really happened to him," she said. Their purpose was clear now. It was not just about saving themselves, but about finding justice for a man they had never met. They rode towards the small settlement of Dry Creek where Miller had been known. It was little more than a trading post and a few scattered homesteads. Nathan knew a man there, an old tracker named Two Feathers who had once ridden with his father. They found him mending a saddle outside his small cabin. He was old, his face a road map of wrinkles, but his eyes were sharp and missed nothing. He greeted Nathan with a solemn embrace and looked at Amelia with cautious curiosity. Nathan explained their situation in the Apache language, his words flowing with a rhythm that fascinated Amelia. Two Feathers listened intently, his gaze never leaving Nathan's face. Two Feathers confirmed the story. "Miller was a good man," he said, switching to heavily accented English for Amelia's benefit. "A good shot. He did not have accidents." He told them that Miller had been found at the base of a rockfall, not far from the main canyon. The marshal from Redemption had ruled it an accident without a real investigation. "The marshal is Morgan's man," Two Feathers added, spitting on the ground. "He sees what Morgan pays him to see." He said he had found tracks near the body. Not just Miller's horse, but 2 others. Shod horses. And they were not from around Dry Creek. The riders had been strangers. "Did you see anything else?" Amelia asked, her mind working. "Anything unusual about the place where he was found?" Two Feathers thought for a moment, his brow furrowed. The rocks were fresh, a new fall, not like the old ones. The stones were different, sharp edges, and a strange color in the sun, like they had fire inside them. Amelia's eyes widened. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a small, dark rock. It was a piece of the worthless shale she had collected from near the entrance to their golden cave. She had kept it as a geological curiosity. "Was it this color?" she asked, holding it out. Two Feathers peered at it, then nodded slowly. Yes, that is the stone. A wave of realization washed over Amelia. Her initial survey area, the place she had been working when the first rockslide happened, was very close to where Miller's body had been discovered. The unique, fire-flecked quartz was only found in that specific location. Nathan, she said, her voice trembling with excitement, I think we have it. We have the proof. If she could match the mineral from the rockfall that killed Miller to the location, and prove that Morgan's men were there, it would shatter the hunting accident story. It was a long shot, a chain of logic that would be hard to prove, but it was their only weapon against a man as powerful as Alistair Morgan. They needed a closer look at the site of Miller's death. Returning to the canyon was a tremendous risk. Dutch and his men would be searching for them with a vengeance. We will go at night, Nathan decided. The moon is new. The darkness will be our shield. They left their horses with Two Feathers and traveled on foot, moving like ghosts through the familiar landscape. The journey was tense, every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig setting their nerves on edge. Amelia felt a primal fear she had never known, but Nathan's calm presence was a steadying force. He moved with an innate awareness of his surroundings, his senses attuned to the slightest disturbance. They found the site of the rockfall easily. It was just as Two Feathers had described. The pile of rubble at the base of the cliff looked fresh. Amelia knelt, her fingers tracing the sharp edges of the stones. She pulled a sample from her satchel, the piece of quartz she had shown Two Feathers. Holding it next to the rocks in the pile, she saw it was a perfect match. The unique, fire-flecked quartz. This is it, she whispered, a thrill of discovery mixing with her fear. This rock formation is unique to this small area. It proves the rockslide was recent. Nathan stood guard, his gaze sweeping the darkened ridgelines above them, his hand resting on the hilt of his knife. Suddenly, Nathan stiffened. He pulled Amelia down behind a large boulder. Someone is coming, he breathed into her ear. They heard the crunch of boots on gravel, then voices. It was Dutch and one of his men. Morgan is getting impatient. Dutch's voice grumbled through the darkness. He wants them found. He said to check this spot again. Said the woman was a rockhound. Might come back here. Amelia's blood ran cold. They had walked right into the lion's den. They were trapped, with nowhere to run. The two men were now standing just yards away, their dark shapes silhouetted against the starry sky. There is nothing here, the other man said. Just a pile of rocks. Shut up and look, Dutch ordered. As the men poked around the rockfall, Nathan made a decision. He picked up a small stone and threw it far down the canyon. It clattered against a rock face, the sound sharp in the night silence. What was that? Dutch's man asked, startled. Go check it out, Dutch commanded. As the man moved away, Nathan sprang from their hiding place. He moved with blinding speed, a silent shadow. He disarmed Dutch before the larger man could even react, the blade of his knife pressed against the man's throat. Make a sound and you die, Nathan whispered. They tied and gagged Dutch, leaving him for his partner to find. They had their proof, but it was useless without the law on their side. The marshal in redemption was Morgan's pawn. There is a territorial judge in Prescott, Amelia said, her mind racing as they rode away. If we can get the evidence to him. It was a long and dangerous ride, but it was their only hope. They rode through the night and the next day, pushing themselves and their horses to the limit. The thought of Morgan's reach, his network of spies and hired guns, was a constant shadow at their heels. But the shared purpose, the fight for justice, had forged their bond into something unbreakable. They arrived back in Redemption under the cover of darkness, exhausted but determined. The town was buzzing with activity. A large banner hung across the main street. Public meeting, the future of the railroad. Morgan was making his move, cementing his power. This is our chance, Nathan said. He will be exposed before the whole town. They found the acting marshal, a young deputy named Calloway, who seemed overwhelmed by his duties. Amelia laid out her evidence, the mineral samples, her geological maps, and the story of Miller's death. Calloway was skeptical, intimidated by Morgan's power, But the logic in Amelia's presentation was undeniable. The town hall was packed. Morgan stood on a stage, speaking of progress and prosperity, his voice booming with false sincerity. "This railroad is the key to our future," he declared. It was then that Nathan stepped forward from the back of the hall. "Your future is built on murder," he shouted. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Morgan's face turned from a mask of charm to one of pure fury. Dutch and his men, now free, moved towards Nathan, their hands on their firearms. Suddenly, the doors burst open and Deputy Calloway entered, flanked by 2 armed citizens. "Alistair Morgan, you are under arrest for the murder of James Miller." Chaos erupted. Dutch drew his firearm, but Nathan was faster, tackling him to the ground. Gunshots rang out as Calloway and his men exchanged fire with the rest of Morgan's thugs. Amelia, standing near the stage, held up the rock sample and the map. "Here is the proof," she yelled over the din. "Morgan's men caused the rockslide that killed Miller. The evidence is in the stone." The townsfolk, seeing the proof and Morgan's violent reaction, turned on him. The tide of public opinion, once so easily manipulated by Morgan, had shifted. When the smoke cleared, Morgan's men were subdued, and the railroad baron himself stood in handcuffs, his empire crumbling around him. In the days that followed, Redemption was a changed town. The truth, once revealed, had a cleansing effect. With Morgan's arrest, his web of corruption began to unravel. People who had been too afraid to speak before came forward with stories of his threats and intimidation. Deputy Calloway, emboldened by his actions, proved to be an honest lawman. The territorial judge arrived from Prescott and, faced with Amelia's irrefutable geological evidence and the testimony of the townsfolk, ensured that Morgan and his men would face justice for their crimes. The shadow that had loomed over the territory for so long had finally lifted. Amelia and Nathan watched the proceedings from a distance. They had given their statements but sought no part in the town's new order. Their work was done. One afternoon they stood on a ridge overlooking the canyon, the place where their journey had begun. "What will you do now?" Nathan asked her. "The railroad will likely send someone else. They will still want to clear the pass." Amelia shook her head. "I do not think so. I have filed a new geological report. It states that the entire canyon is unstable and unsuitable for a rail line. It is a lie, of course, but one that will protect this place. She was using her science to preserve, not to exploit. The secret of the gold remained safe, hidden in the heart of the mountain. It was a treasure they would leave for the earth to keep." "And you?" Amelia asked, turning to him. "Where will you go?" Nathan looked out at the vast expanse of land, his homeland. "The world is changing," he said, a note of sadness in his voice. "My people are being forced onto smaller and smaller lands. But the spirit of this place, it cannot be caged." He turned to face her, his dark eyes holding a deep and tender emotion. "I will find my own path, but I do not wish to walk it alone." The unspoken question hung in the warm afternoon air, a promise of a new beginning. Amelia's heart swelled with a feeling so powerful, it left her breathless. She thought of her old life, of the structured, predictable world she had left behind. It held no appeal for her now. Her future was here, in this wild, beautiful land, with this brave and honorable man. She stepped forward and took his hand, her fingers lacing with his. "Neither do I," she said, her voice clear and certain. A slow smile spread across Nathan's face, a smile that reached his eyes and lit them from within. Together they turned away from the canyon in the town of Redemption and walked towards the horizon, 2 different souls from 2 different worlds, united by a love forged in fire, stone, and truth.